What's going on, everyone? We've got an exciting video today. I mentioned last week and the week before that we really haven't seen a big tournament take place. This weekend changes that for post Jango Fett. And it's really exciting to see because there is a big diversity of decks coming in to the meta. Not one deck really looking too strong, and that's exactly what we want to see. Yesterday, I also talked about the ban and whether or not that was a good thing. I think overall, it was a really, really good decision for the meta. And honestly, this data seems to kind of validate that perspective. Of course, we won't know for certain because this is the first big tournament and people are going to base their future decks for future big tournaments off this one, since this is a huge data point. However, we're going to dive into kind of what's going on day one and what's made to day two, since we don't actually have the finishings of day two yet. We got to wait and see until tomorrow. But for today's purpose, I want to say a big and quick thank you to my patrons over on Patreon, guys. Really thank you all for supporting the channel. But let's first dive into this. This is just the initial count of the leaders submitted on day one. And as you can see, it has been an absolutely amazing spread of different decks. Okay, the biggest percentage point here is actually Sabine Wren, which doesn't surprise me at all. 10% is not an insane amount, being one of the most popular and one of the most used to decks in the entire Star Wars Unlimited from set one, but also it's the biggest deck that is the most defined quantity. Sabine Wren really hasn't changed a whole lot. And it got a pretty big buff from Jango being pushed out of the meta due to bans. So seeing Sabine Wren coming in at 10% and being the most of the field is really good to see, because people are flocking to Sabine as a kind of backup plan because they weren't really sure what to go with after the fact of the bans. So that right there is already a pretty good sign. The second thing is the other decks that we're looking at that are kind of following that up, Quinlan being a big one, Cad Bane, Han 1, these are kind of big decks that we were looking at to see where they're going to shape up in the meta, alongside things like Anakin Skywalker, all hovering around the 7 to 9%, and Quinlan being 9% when a lot of people consider him to be the best deck, including myself, at least right now. This not dominating the meta like Jango was at like 18 to 26% of the meta, which is incredibly crazy, by the way. That is almost double the most, which is Sabine. So you can definitely see the difference in terms of how dominant those decks are, is really good to see. But also, and this might be the coolest factor, is that there's a lot of other lists that are hovering around the 3% range. And we'll see one list that has really soared because of the value of Quinlan, and a list that I've talked about a couple of times when I've talked about Quinlan. But Gar Saxon, Bosk, we've got Emperor Palpatine, Darth Vader, the Dork Lord of the Sith version. We've got things like Darth Vader, the set 4 version, which you guys can't see over here because it's behind my head. But so set 1 and set 4. We've got things like Piet, Luke Skywalker from set 1. We've got Leia, Rey's, like a pretty big spread of lists here that are hovering around a pretty good percentage of the meta to really diversify the leaders that we're seeing. And honestly, this is extremely, extremely exciting. Just extremely exciting. We have seen a lot of these different lists be completely unplayable due to Jango, and to a not necessarily lesser extent, but to an extent also Han 1 really pushing them out. Either because they're too late to deploy, particularly with a Dark Lord of the Sith Darth Vader, like with DJ, or just being able to not actually get your attacks in, etc., etc., etc. There is a huge spread, and I'm really excited about it. But honestly, we could sit here and talk about the meta and what decks showed up all day. But what decks actually performed? I think this is where it gets a lot more interesting. Just as a reminder, number 1 here, Sabine in terms of popularity. Number 2, we've got Quinlan. Okay. Number 3, it's actually a tie between Han 1 and Cad Bane. So 3 and 4, kind of. And number 5, in terms of the most popular deck, is Anakin Skywalker. Close after, we've got things like Gar Saxon, Luke Skywalker, Piet, that type of deck, Darth Vader, which is kind of crazy. But then we dive into the data from day 2. And I just want to say thank you. One of my Patreon members actually went ahead and pulled this together. And I also actually have another image that I want to show you all, which is kind of like a pie chart here. But we get to see the base combinations with this one, which I kind of like. But we have Quinlan as the most popular conversion, which makes sense, right? He wasn't the most popular deck, but had most top 8s, or I shouldn't say top 8, top 64, day 2, in terms of conversion. Great. That means Quinlan performing exceptionally well. QIRA. This is the big one here. A very low, not very low, but a significantly lower percentage of the lists were QIRA. But QIRA Green in particular has a pretty good matchup against Quinlan. And that, I think, is favoring QIRA. And just kind of bans in general favor her a lot. Sabine as the 3rd most populated conversion deck. As the most popular deck, still doing quite well, but not quite as powerful, it seems, as some of the other ones on the list. Han following that up, but this one, Han Green, mostly, versus Han Yellow, which is kind of interesting to see. I think this makes a lot of sense. I think Han Green actually did get a lot better with set 4. We've got Cad Bane, mostly Cad Bane Red. We've got Darth Vader. This one is Darth Vader set 4 version, which is crazy to see 4 lists of Darth Vader. Anakin Skywalker, okay. Han Solo, worth the risk. This one is the different one. This is, oh my gosh. Worth the risk is this the set 2 version? I believe it is the set 2 version, but I don't, yeah, Never Tell Me the Odds is the set 4 version. I was trying to think of the set 4 version. Never Tell Me the Odds is the set 4. So this is set 2 Han Solo. We've got Kylo Ren, which was a very low percentage of actually making top 64, and a smattering of other one-ofs. This is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. Obviously, we're not going to see, again, super convincing results until we see top 8. I shouldn't say that. This is convincing results, but we're not going to see like complete solidified, okay, where are every decks situating themselves? Are we actually able to get some of these weird ones into the top 8? I don't know. If we go back and look at some of the previous tournaments, it was significantly Django dominated. And mind you, part of this is, and part of the from the other tournaments, people wanting to just run in with random decks to win a showcase. Like people were playing weird leaders to try to get to the top 64 to win a showcase version of their leader, which is something that did kind of shift the results a little bit. But again, this entire list, a lot of these were unplayable with Django in the meta. The first one being Darth Vader. Oh my gosh, playing a bunch of 1 toughness units, or that type of effect where you have a bunch of units that you're trying to attack to generate more tokens and things like that, just was impossible realistically in the Django meta because of all the 1 damage triggers. Things like Han Solo were really tough to play as well when you're trying to get big attacks in. We had Kylo Ren, which was pretty much unplayable with Django because you had a bunch of 1 toughness units as well as a bunch of attacking that you were trying to do. All these types of lists really able to even have a chance is something new post Django. But again, I want to double back to also with the DJ modification, and we're not seeing as much tempo-based strategies. If you look at the top decks, we have Quinlan, who is more of a tempo aggro deck, for sure. That is definitely the biggest contender. We have QIRA, who's more of a mid-range, soft control style with QIRA Green. Sabine, which is more of like an aggro / mid-range style where you're able to value out the Poe and Wrecker to close out the game, but definitely more of an aggro variant. Han, which isn't as disruptive generally with the Han Green variant. Han Yellow is far more disruptive, but I would still say kind of towards that tempo version. Cad Bane, a little bit more controlling with the Tarkin Town, but can definitely kind of curve out as well. There is not as much disruption going on towards your mid-game strategies / your early game strategies. Yes, there still is a lot. Yes, Tarkin Town is still pretty prominent. But the fact that we're seeing multiple data vaults in the top 64, multiple ECLs, multiple Tarkin Towns, multiple Colossi. Like, this type of stuff is really exciting to see because we're not seeing complete domination of Tarkin Town yet. Now, again, we may see top 8 being, 4 Quinlins, 4 QIRAs, 4 Quinlins, 4 Sabines, whatever it is. I don't know. But the point here is a lot of these lists just wouldn't exist. And there is a significant better spread of lists than there was prior. Not only in the initial meta report, but also in the conversions. And that's really important to note. Again, if you were to look back on the first tournament that took place, Django was significantly dominating in terms of meta popularity, and there were no prior tournaments showing that Django was going to be the top of the meta. That was just what people surmised after like one game out of set 4. So yes, Django's ban has significantly changed the meta, not only just removing Django Fett and filling in with the top other decks, but actually shifting other decks around because Django's matchup was so oppressive for them that they weren't even able to play their deck in a competitive setting because of Django. So definitely very interesting. And what I could do here is pull up this other image that I have just to give you guys another comparable image here. Let me just put this in full screen. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. If we look here, we've got top 64 end of day 1. Quinlan at 17%, which is still a good amount, by the way. Definitely still a very, very significant amount in 17%. So it's not something to ignore, right? Not saying that Tarkin Town doesn't need to be looked at, and I'll mention that kind of nearing the end of the video because I think this chart definitely shows a better representation of kind of what we can look at comparatively. QIRA at 14%, Han 1 at 12, Sabine at 12, Cad Bane at 11%, Darth Vader Victor Squadron at 6%, and then the rest at 3 or lower. This is definitely a more healthy spread of decks than it was before. Just straight up. Now we talk about kind of, are there still issues with some of the top decks? I think Kira's results speak for her matchups in the current meta rather than Kira herself. If Kira was truly this strong, I don't think we would have seen her perform kind of as weak as we did already in the meta. It's really because not only did one of the things that kind of she struggled against is gone, but also the fact that the decks that are incredibly good, she's pretty good against. Those two things are leading Kira to definitely have a better win rate. Quinlan is the only one that I think is under consideration. And most people are talking about Quinlan in the context of Tarkin Town. Is Tarkin Town too strong? If you look at these top decks, we have Quinlan and Cad Bane for the most part using Tarkin Town. Quinlan, what was it, like 11 decks? I think 9 of them or whatnot were Tarkin Town. If we just pop back over here, okay, all Tarkin Town. So 11 Tarkin Town plus 6, we have 17 Tarkin Towns amongst most of the top decks. Kylo Ren was also Tarkin Town. We also have another Tarkin Town from Rey. So we have 1, 3, plus 6. That's 9 plus 11. That's 20 of the 64 decks Tarkin Town. But if you look, there's also 7 data vaults from QIRA. We also have the data vaults from Darth Vader as well as Iden. So that's 9 data vaults, which is a pretty good showing. We have 8 ECLs from Sabine, plus 1, so 9 ECLs, plus another one from Han Solo. So that's 10 ECLs. Oh, well, we also have a data vault from this. So a pretty decent spread. Like, yes, Tarkin Town is still one of the more dominant bases, but we're not seeing quite as heavy of a dominance from Tarkin Town. Because remember, before when Django was in the meta, it was Django Tarkin Town, Quinlan Tarkin Town, Cad Bane Tarkin Town. Like, that was a lot. Now we actually have a lot more of a spread, which is good to see as well. I think Tarkin Town is one of those things that they could consider to adjust. And by adjust, I mean probably just suspending. That is the one question on everyone's mind. And I think we will see more conclusive results tomorrow. I will say, and I've talked about Quinlan a lot. I've played Quinlan a lot at this point. It's a really good deck. I think based on what we're seeing of the meta here, I think it's kind of auto-correcting itself a little bit. But we will have to see tomorrow, realistically. I am not exactly sure if Quinlan's in that space that Django really was. In fact, I'll just say this right now. It's not in the space that Django really was. But it might have been in the space in that where Han was back in set 3, where it wasn't quite as dominant as Boba Fett. It was not as dominant as Jango Fett, but it was still dominant to a point where people were getting frustrated with it. And that's something that Quinlan might be in that position. But then the question is, does that frustration warrant a suspension? I don't know. I think that really does need to see more results. This isn't quite as conclusive as the first 2 tournaments. And besides, we haven't even seen the finishing of this tournament yet. I think once we see the finishing of this tournament, by the way, a 600-player tournament, and then also, potentially another one in the next coming weeks or whatever, then we'll see a little bit more results from this. I don't think they should really be doing anything at this point in terms of suspending cards, but maybe they could consider it at the start of set 5. I think that's probably what they'll come back and consider. I know they said they're going to be monitoring the meta after the suspension of Django. And I think, well, this being the first big competitive tournament, this will definitely be on the radar of FG and may cause them to make some changes. I don't know. We'll see. If people have a significant amount of feedback, I think that's going to be what pushes people or FFG in a direction or another. But I actually don't see a problem with this so far. We'll see. It's a lot more healthy and a lot more exciting, to be honest. Like, the fact that I get to see all these different lists here, just period, makes me more excited. I'm excited to see the top 8 and whoever actually takes down the tournament. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all for the next one.